Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings.
Just try and demonstrate a genuine interest in the kind of thing that they're looking for. And it does go a long way with people. That passion to do a job is one of the key things for anyone working in the creative industries.
Wednesday, so we're back, and this is the Pencil Kings podcast. Today, we're talking with Simon Morse, who works at a company that I used a ton when I was back, in the video game days. I was asking Simon when the site started, and he said 1999, which was right when I was about graduating high school. And so I know I was using it and looking at it as I was learning to be a digital artist and a video game artist. So I want to welcome Simon Morse from 3D Total to the call. Simon is the studio manager. And just to give people a sense of what that actually means, because I feel like I don't even know. And I feel like studio manager can mean something different depending where you work. So for you, Simon, could you give people a kind of a 1-minute overview of what you do as a studio manager, and then we'll get into the story of what that all means.
Sure. Cheers. Yeah, nice to meet you all. The studio manager job is an interesting one. To be general and to fit it into 1 minute, I would say the purpose of my job is to ensure that the 3 Total site is continuing to be full of content which people find useful and which is showing off some of the best CG art created in the world today. But the other half of my job is making sure the books that we publish are really good and really relevant to what people want these days, and keep up to date with trends and different processes that people are using in the industry, as well as showing off art from people which people might not have seen otherwise, sketches, things like that, people's behind the scene work. So generally, it's a case of just making sure we are making everything and doing everything we should do to keep the website and the publishing company up to date and running well.
Cool. And so I got to ask, in my mind, the studio manager is kind of the top position. I know that there's probably like COO or CEO or president in a traditional corporate structure above you. But is there anybody else that's kind of dictating what or like helping you work to define what the studio manager does and sees and what kind of projects you're taking on?
Sure. So 3 Total was set up by Tom Greenway, as you mentioned, in 1999. And he started as a college project. And Tom these days doesn't come into work as often as he used to. So Tom usually comes in on Mondays. And actually, the rest of the time, funnily enough, he spends in a piece of woodland outside of the town where we work in Worcester, in England, and he builds big tree houses and things like that. So he's living a nice lifestyle. But Tom, when he comes in on Mondays, we spend a lot of time together, and we are shaping up future projects, our book schedule, and we plan over a year in advance at all times. So we have to make sure that we are being quick to react to new things that come up, new interesting ideas that we have, and also making sure that we are continuing to reflect the high quality of CGI out there today. So Tom and I shape a lot of things between us, but in the day-to-day running of things, it's basically my job to make sure Tom's vision and idea for things is followed through by the rest of the team. There's about 14 of us here, so it's a case of making sure everyone is on target and still heading for the same idea as we had initially. Yeah, it's a good structure and it works well.
Oh, it's so cool. So I think in my mind then it is kind of like, there's parallels between a chief operating officer that, you make sure that everything gets done, you execute the vision, you're in the office every day working with people, solving problems for them, and making sure that things happen to schedule or as close as they can be.
Yeah, that is a good description. Yeah, my job is, it's funny, I have my own desk and I have my own computer, but I don't spend as much time as you'd perhaps think. I spend a lot of time talking to people, so I'm at their desks more often than I'm at my own desk. Just making sure that what they're doing, what they're working on, reflects that original idea. I do sadly have to do all the admin jobs that a manager has to do, but the real running of the company comes from speaking to the individuals. And I must say the team we have here is brilliant. It really is a very good team. So my job definitely is made easier by the people that I work with. But yeah, that's a good description of it.
All right. And like one of the things that I'm not sure if you've listened to some of the past episodes, but one of the ideas that I've started to really hit on is the idea of soft skills with artists. Because I know there's a lot of people who listen, and there's a lot of people that you deal with, I'm sure, a lot of the customers and clients of 3D Total. And they're so focused on like being the best artist that they can be, which is great. But that's like 50%. And then there's another 50% of what I've been calling soft skills now, of like, being accountable, being professional. And there's so many things that fall under being professional. But for a studio manager, what are some of those skills? And the reason why I want to start to dive into this is because I feel like people aren't talking about it enough. There's so much stuff talking about like, here's how to use these kind of brushes. Here's how to follow this recipe for proportions. But there's not a lot of things saying like, being professional is so important. Being on time is so important. And so I'm curious, what kind of skills do you think are necessary for a studio manager? Because I feel like as your evolution as an artist goes, you start as a junior artist, and then you're like a generalist or whatever, and then you become a lead, and then you become like a senior artist, and then maybe you're like a assistant art director, and you keep going up and up and up. And eventually you run out of art tasks, and then you're sort of like looking at management positions, and studio managers is one of those really high level positions. So one of the highest. And I feel like it would be cool to know what skills you think, the soft skills, are so important for this kind of position, as an idea of the skills that somebody at the start of their journey could start to develop and be more aware that it's like, oh, right, I want to continue to improve, and maybe studio manager isn't or studio director isn't one of the things that's on their radar right now, but these soft skills are sort of like they're all the same all the way through. But for you, which skills are really important?
For me, from a studio manager's perspective, you're right. There are lots of important things that you need to understand, and particularly when you're working with book, you need to have your eye kept on all the technical processes that all the artists might use, because you need to understand this when you're reading about them. If you don't understand them, you can't edit that kind of content. However,
all right, we had some technical issues, but we got Simon back, and he was just about to start into the soft skills that he thinks are the strongest points for becoming a studio manager and just for artists in general.
Thanks, Mitch. Sorry about that, guys. So the number one skill for me that is most important is people skills. So it's an ability to talk to people and get them to buy into your ideas and visions. Because when you work with artists and creative people, the problem is that obviously they all have all these amazing ideas, and they're always great ideas, but you have to be able to filter down to the idea that you're going to go with, and you have to at times be able to get people to also buy into that idea over and above the ideas that they have. So yeah, particularly when working with creative people, it's that ability to describe a project, get them on board with your vision for it, and then maybe at times fight off alternate ideas that don't quite fit. I mean, when you're a studio manager, you're not just thinking about what looks cool or what will be perceived well by an audience. You have to also think about how profitable it's going to be. You have to think about the audience who are going to buy this. So you have to sit in their shoes all the time, and that's what you need to keep feeding back to people. And the feedback of that isn't too hard, but getting them to agree with you and to comply and work in the way that you want them to. So that's a bit harder. So the number one skill, and I feel this is true probably for most positions actually, is that ability to get over an idea and to get people to follow through with that idea and work towards that same vision. And that really comes down to your ability to talk to people and kind of get them to like you and agree with you when it comes to controversial moments.
Oh, you said that perfectly, and I couldn't agree more that it really just does come down to sort of like vision and communication, knowing where you want to go, and then being able to get people to rally behind that. But you mentioned something really interesting there that I thought was, I wanted to dive into a little bit more, and that's the idea of profitability, because I remember, sitting in the artist's seat, I never thought about profitability at all. I just thought like it was the company's job to pay me because I showed up and I did the work and I worked hard. But I didn't realize, until I started running Pencil Kings, it's like, wow, I have to keep the lights on. Like there's decisions that I have to make that I don't necessarily want to make because this is going to ensure a longer term vision for the company. So I was curious if you could talk a little bit about that, like how you get artists to realize this, because I feel like if more people could realize that at the end of the day, it's like the company has to make money in order for you to get to pay you. And if you like working there and you like the projects that you work on, you should also be aligned to coming up with ideas that could help improve the profitability. But for whatever reason, I find that's not the case, or at least in my experience, that hasn't been the case, thinking about profitability as an artist.
Yeah, it's really important, and it's also really easy to lose sight of, because when you're particularly on the books that we make, you've got this idea of what the book's going to look like, and you get wrapped up with all the cool ideas of this will look great and this will be so much fun. But actually, the key for all of it to me is to keep your eyes on the audience. You've got to remember who it is who you want to sell your product or your service or anything to. You have to remember what it is that they're going to want and what they're going to find useful. And you need to be able to get over that information to them. It's about design or things like that. So we always start every book. We begin by really thinking about who's going to buy this book. Who do we want to buy this book? And that really dictates which books we choose. Because sometimes we get an idea for a book which will be so much fun and it will look great and we'll be really pleased with it. But then at the end of the process, you look at the audience and who's going to buy it, and you realise that actually what you've planned is something that we all love, but actually it's not as useful to a large group of people. Whereas now we always start with that audience, and everything throughout the whole book, so the price of the book, the type of tutorial content there is in it, the points that we make special attention of in regards to training, it's all focused on the audience, because at the end of the day, the internet is so good at sharing information now. If you make a bad book or if you make a bad product, people will let other people know that that product is bad. So you have to keep focused on the audience. You have to remember, who is this book for? What's the title of this book? What was the focus of the book initially? And as that content comes in, because we often work with multiple freelancers for a book, so we might work with 30 different artists to fill the content of a book. And as we are commissioning each of those, we have to make sure our brief is really solid to make sure they provide the content as we had it in that initial vision, so that it's focused for the audience and the target user at the end. And that is that's the hardest thing about making books, is you lose that vision. Somewhere in the sort of year-long process that we have of making a book, the vision can get lost. And it's always important, it's a big part of my job to make sure that we are back round to that vision, that we always manage to go back to the artist and say, yeah, that was cool, but can you focus on this part of the tutorial, because actually that's what we're trying to push across in this thing. So yeah, the audience, you've got to remember the audience. You've got to think about who it's for. You've got to think about whether the people you're aiming this at are going to be people who are going to buy it, and then you need to price it accordingly. You need to give them a really good justifiable reason as to why they kind of need that book to help them do what they want to do. So yeah, profitability is affected by your ability to remember your target audience and make sure that when those reviews do come out for your book, they're saying, yes, this is exactly the book I wanted. Because if they don't say that, then the review is probably going to have a negative effect. So we definitely, we're thinking about our reviews, we're thinking about who's going to buy our book from day one of the process. And it should never be forgotten. And that's why even on the website, we use lots of analytics information to look at who's using our website, what are they using it for, where are they spending time on the site, because this is going to dictate the type of content that we're going to continue to commission for our website. So you need to always keep your eye on the user and never let yourself be dragged too far away by your own visions or your own thoughts about what would be cool. So yeah, thinking about the user always is, thinking about your target audience, who they are, how many of them are there, and are they going to pay for this? That is, in my opinion, the key to maintaining profitability.
And I love the way that you phrase that as well, because just, as you were saying it, I was starting to think that even if you're, at the beginning of your career as an artist, you still have to think about your audience. So instead of your audience being customers, generally it's going to be an art director or a hiring manager or a recruiter. And so you still have to keep these things in terms of your own personal profitability, that if you aren't keeping these art directors in mind, or whoever's going to look at your work, your portfolio, and hire you, and you're creating something weird, like something, you just love unicorns and you just keep making these unicorns, but nobody, it's really hard to find that hiring manager that wants, unicorn art, but if you had started to think, all the time about, okay, who's going to look at my work? What kind of positions do they need to fill? What kind of creative problems are they having? How can I show that in my portfolio? And so just like what Simon and 3D Total are doing, it doesn't matter what level you're at. This doesn't go away. So it's, again, another great skill that you can start to develop is looking at, like, okay, look at and really understand who the target audience is.
Yeah, we're making a book later this year, and it's called The Ultimate Concept Art Career Guide, and it really focuses on this kind of stuff. So specifically for the artist. So this is really aimed at people who really want a career in concept art. They want to be working in good studios. They want to know how to appeal to them. And the core focus of this book is going to be basically giving those people that information that they need. We've worked with so many studios, artists, freelancers over the space of years now for our magazines and books and the website. And you get this really good idea of feedback from them about what, one of the questions from the interviews that we do for our magazines is what advice would you give yourself if you could rewind 10 years? And you get so many similar things which people say, but so many young artists or people going through their art education, they don't know this stuff until they stumble across it later in their life. So we're really trying to put together this kind of stuff, this idea of being able to concentrate, you like to say, not on the unicorns, but instead on the kind of thing which the people are looking for, the kind of art that people are employing artists for, what games, trying to think about your focus and your career, where do you want to go, and how does that affect the kind of art you should be doing now as you're in your training phase. So it's really important, actually. It spreads across everything. All the things we do, even things which are not even art related, you still always have to think about your end user. If you don't think about your end user, it's just not going to work. You've got to think about your goal, your end user, and then if you stay on that line, then things will work out well.
Simon, I want to ask, like, what are the most popular books from 3D Total? Because I'm sure that there's, I don't know off the top of my head what the most popular ones are. And I'm sure there's people who are listening who aren't aware of some of these books that are your most popular that would really be interested to check them out. And I've got a follow-up question, but we'll start here with just like, what are some of the most popular ones? So if you're listening, you can go to 3D Total and check out some of these books.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we made books for years. So we started using an external publishing company and started Digital Art Masters, which we got to volume 9 of those. But we changed over to publishing them ourselves at about volume 5. And we've got Digital Painting Techniques, which I think we got pretty high with those as well. And we started publishing with an external publisher, but then moved to ourselves, our own publishing company. We've got over 40 titles now, but the best-selling title we have is probably Beginner's Guide to Digital Painting. It's a really well-rounded book, and even though it's maybe 5 years old now and Photoshop has changed, the core skills and description of processes is still as relevant today, and we sell loads of those books still, and I'm particularly pleased about that because I was the editor for that book, so that makes me happy. But since then, we've had a number of other really successful projects, and everything seems to work out pretty well for us. But let me think about it. A while back now, last year, we did a book, The Art of Lois van Baarle, and we launched that as a Kickstarter project. And I think in the 30 days of the Kickstarter, it did about £250,000 in the UK. But since then, that's actually a small portion of the amount of books we sold. We thought that was an amazing outcome for 30 days, but since then, that's probably only about a quarter of what we've sold. So that book's done really well and just continues to blow us away on how well that does. But we've got other really cool series like Sketching from the Imagination. It's like a collection of 50 sketchbooks from brilliant artists, but of work that you probably wouldn't see online. Kind of their behind-the-scenes stuff, and we've done lots of different themes. So you've had like a fantasy, sci-fi, but we've just launched characters. So it's got a mixture of sort of character designers for concept art and animation. things like that. And it's a really cool series. And it's a huge, like, it feels really fat when you have it, but it's an amazing source of inspiration. But we primarily started looking at CG artwork and the training to do with that. So we have books about ZBrush or ZBrush, as you would call it, and digital painting. Digital painting series have done great. We have such a wide range now. I struggle to even remember everything. But the books do great, and we sell them really well all over the world. And we've got really good plans for future books as well. And we try to really keep our finger on the pulse of what people are doing and what's particularly popular. We've also got, this might be particularly interesting to some of your guys who are listening to this podcast. We have a brilliant quarterly magazine called Graphite. And this is all traditional skills. A lot of it is using just pencils and paper. Some other maybe traditional tools as well, maybe some markers. And it's a really, really nice magazine. And the content is both article-based, so in interviews, but also tutorial-based. And that has been, the feedback we've got from that has been so exciting. It's been really, really good. And it's really nice to have, because we've done digital magazines before, but this is our first print magazine, even though it's a quarterly one. And the feedback's been great, and it feels really nice, and people are so pleased when it arrives to the door. We get this huge amount of emails back saying it's just arrived and it looks amazing. So we're really pleased with that. And actually, because that structure has worked really well for us, later this year we're doing another print quarterly magazine called Character Design Quarterly, which is really focused on that character design for animation and illustration. And we haven't launched it yet. In fact, it's going to launch in March, and it's looking really good. The designers have done an amazing job. The content within the first issue is absolutely amazing, and we've got some really big name artists in the first one. So it's we've got a lot basically. If you like art, then you should really check out our books. But we have a lot of them, and we're always doing new stuff. We do 8 new books a year. We've got these 2 print magazines we do now, which are going to be quarterly. We still have 2D Artists, which is a digital magazine. So the books, we work on these solidly. That's a lot of what the staff here does. It's focused on the books, and I must admit we get really great feedback. And I'm not just saying that; they seem to be helpful books that really are wanted by people who were looking to improve their art skills or just add inspiration to their bookshelves.
Yeah, one of the things I really like about the books that you put out is like just the little attention to detail with the design, like little footnotes in the margins and different things like that just makes it feel more like somebody who gets it, put this together and put a lot of love into putting it together. I don't know what it is, but when I see little, so the editor or whoever has printed little notes, scribbles on the side, yeah. I just love that personally.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's important that people like stuff like that. We in most tutorials we'll have a fairly linear workflow, so it takes them from the first step through to the end. But along the way, there's always these like bonus tips or bits of information which often don't get put in tutorials and may not even be something technical or anything like that. Just little tips of little things for you to think about as you're going through your process. The idea is really that we want people to be thinking about what they're doing. Artists quite often will just sit down and just go for it because they can. But actually, we really want people to think about what they're doing. We want them to have a little nudge in a direction of maybe improving the speed of their workflow or adding a new dynamic to it that they wouldn't have thought of before. We work really hard with that, and it's important that the editors who work here, and actually the whole team who work here, we all love the art that we work with, and we always also have a genuine interest in it, and it really helps us make sure that we are thinking in the shoes of the people reading the book again, because if it's useful to us, then it's got to be useful to them as well. So yeah, well, I'm glad you spot that kind of thing. That's really pleasing. I'll tell the editors that you notice that kind of thing. They'll be pleased.
Oh, definitely. I'm a little bit curious about. I forget the name of the town that you said you were in, and I'm wondering like how big is that town, because there's an idea of like you need to be in London for things to happen, or you need to be in New York or Los Angeles, and there's cool stuff happening all over the place. And so I'm a little bit curious about what your studio's like, and I don't know if you have a video or something where you've shot a studio tour online, but and if you have, definitely let us know. So let's just start there. Like, what's the town, and how big is it?
Worcester is sort of
Worcester,
in the heart of England. So it's everyone. Whenever I talk to people in the States or elsewhere, and they say, where are you based? And I say Worcester, and the first question is, how far is that from London? Because that's sort of the geography that people know. So we're about 2.5 hours away from London in the car. So we are literally pretty far away from most of the other companies that are doing anything related to us. But we work with freelancers around the globe, so it doesn't really matter where we are. We do a lot of stuff online, email and Skype. It's really important for us to keep in touch with the artists we work with, but we can do that from where we are. Tom, who owns 3D Total, his background was working in the games industry down in London as well. And I think London really suits some people, and other people it doesn't. And he's definitely more of a like I say, he spends a lot of his time working in the woods, building a big tree house. And so he moved the office up here, but I've only worked here since it's been in Worcester. But it's fine as a location. It's a small city. People come to see us and are just amazed that we are based in this really small city in the middle of nowhere. That's not the easiest to get to, and it's a nightmare to get to our car park. And it's in some ways, it's for many people it'd be totally inconvenient, but for the people who work here, it's great. In regards to our office space, we have 2 main rooms. I'll arrange some photographs for you and send them across so you can get an idea of what we look like. But it's a really casual working environment. Tom, who owns 3D Total, he likes doing things in a casual way. So we just turn up and we might look a little unkept. But it's a nice casual environment, and we also work flexi time, so people sort of come and go at times that suit them. But it's a small office. We have 2 rooms, so there's 3 full-time members of staff in my room. There's myself, one of the editors, and the lead editor, who also does a lot of our marketing tasks. But we also have 2 other people that work in there. We have someone who does advertising, sales, and a games designer who does like board games, which we've launched through Kickstarter, which is a totally different sort of twist off the wall for us. But it's just one of those extra projects we do, which are fun and interesting. But then in the second room, which is the bigger room, we have 2 more editors, our techie computer guy who does stuff which totally blows my mind. I don't understand it at all. We have our admin guy, but it's really selling him short saying admin guy. He does, again, stuff which I can't even get my head around, but he does a lot of stuff for us. But then we have 3 designers in that room, and we have a guy who does our post. And then also in that room, that's where Tom sits or stands, because he's got a standing desk when he comes in. But it's quite a small office. We have a big basement space where we keep all our books. But actually, most of our books are distributed around the world, so we don't need to keep too much stuff here. We also have a range of anatomy reference figures for artists. It's quite an affordable reference figure considering how much they can be. And they've done really, really well for us this year. So we've had to really bump up the amount we stock of those because we need to keep up with sales. And they're doing really, really great and get reviewed very well. So again, in our room, in my small room at the moment, we've got like a wall of boxes, and that's just anatomy figures. So it's kind of I describe it as a kind of a bit of a messy area, but a really relaxed, casual area. It means that people can have a nice time when they work. They don't feel too pressurized about things like what they're wearing that morning. It's nice. It's a really nice environment. And it seems to be really conducive to being productive and creative. So it really works well for us. I don't know if it would work for everyone, but for us, it's great.
Oh, I love it. It reminds me of one of the first places that I worked was, part of my story is I grew up in this little village of 650 people, and my first, real job as an animator was a Flash animator, and it was in an even smaller village. I think they even have a word that's smaller than village. There's only 350 people there, but it's very similar. Like we just had this cool, really cool space, really easy going, and I'm curious, like how do you find people locally that go there, or because I'm wondering if somebody saw a job advertisement and or position opening and they're like, oh, cool, 3D Total, I've heard of these guys. Oh, they're in Worcester. No, but I think there's so many cool things that you can get at working at smaller companies where you have more opportunities to grow. Whereas if you join a big corporate structure, you're pretty much like whatever you're hired for. That's it. That's all you do. You're like a cog in a machine. But in a smaller company, there's all kinds of stuff. It's like, oh, hey, we forgot the company Christmas party. Who wants to organize this? And if you love partying, that can be your thing, and you can take that job over. So I'm curious, like, what you sort of like, how do you attract people there, or do you just hire people locally, or people coming from London, or people coming from all over the world? What's it look like?
When we advertise, we keep hold of our staff quite well, actually. So we don't have to advertise very much. But when we do get lots of applicants from around the country, from around the world. But we do generally hire locally. The thing is, we're looking for sort of a passion in what we do, because even if someone hasn't got much experience in something, if they're genuinely passionate about it, then that, in our experience, often makes up for the gap in experience. As long as they are, able to do a job, they may not have that much experience, but their passion carries them the rest of the way. And from my personal point of view as a studio manager here, when I came to 3D Total initially, I was sort of right down on a low run. I came here and I think my job title was project assistant, and I used to help out with the 2 digital magazines that we made. But then since then I moved up to an editor, then I was publishing manager. Then I was away for a couple of years working on my own projects, and I came back, and now I'm studio manager. And the real strength in small companies, like you said, when you have that ability or that opportunity to raise through the levels, is you get a much better understanding of how the company works. You have a really good understanding of the workloads that each of the different employees have. The 3 editors that we work with here, they kind of have the short straw a little bit, because I've done all their jobs before. I used to do the same things as they do. So I've got a really good perspective on that. And I've worked with designers on all the different projects, all the different levels. So yeah, working in a small company, sometimes people think, particularly when they go in at a really low level, they find it really hard, particularly after they've taken some sort of formal qualification or education. They find it really hard to go in at that lower level. But the opportunities, if you work hard and you show a genuine interest in making things as good as you can physically make them, the opportunities are really good. I mean, it does depend on who your employer is, but Tom's really good at making sure you progress along the way when the time comes. And I mean, it may not appeal to all people. Some people want to go straight in and want to do exactly the job that they know they want to do. But actually, if you have the patience to work through a company and understand all those different levels, it's incredibly beneficial. And it means that when it comes to working on projects, you have a much better understanding of all the parts involved and how they need to come about to happen. If you're just thrown in at the top, you can lose sight a little bit of all the different parts. And it actually makes it hard for other people to work with you, because you don't really have an understanding of the processes that they have to go through. So yeah, that's really important, and I would definitely promote it to people as being a really good choice for them to make. Get in at a studio, understand all the processes, and work your way up to the job you want. Other things you might even find other jobs which you've been doing appeal to, and you might want to take another direction. But you don't have to rush in and go straight away and do the top job. It's a really good idea to make sure you have a really good foundation of everything to do with that company, and it will help you. The higher up you get, it will help you do your job much better.
I'm so glad you said everything that you just said. I'm a real advocate of like hiring locally and also looking for jobs locally. That a lot of people, they have big dreams, and I support those dreams. Like, you should want to work at the company that you want to work at. If it doesn't matter what that is, but there's also like often local companies that are really cool that you might not have heard of before, but you still have to do some work. And I feel like 3D Total, you're probably a big deal in your town because you've been around for so long. People know, it's one of the top sites to go to for digital art. Now we're sort of like running up against time. And so my last question is the opposite. So if somebody wanted to get on 3D Total's radar and get a job, because as you were explaining the environment and the fact that your boss or that Tom or the founder he's off building tree houses, I just feel like that's the kind of place that, you're involved in art, you're involved in education, you're involved in publishing, like all the same things that we do at Pencil Kings, but you're in a different level and you've been doing it longer at a higher level. And the fact that you're the guy that started it is off now building treehouse. I just feel like that whole cycle is very interesting and exciting. So I'm not from England. I live so far away. How could I get on 3D Total's radar to like sneak myself in the door? Because I feel like you guys sound very open. And if somebody was really passionate and then like had really good ideas and just kept like knocking on that door, that you'd be like, okay, stop sending me emails. We'll try you out for a month. You're going to do the worst work that we have here. We need somebody to sort our basement and make sure everything's labeled correctly, but we'll try you for a month. How would somebody go about getting on your radar like that?
It's tricky for in-house jobs, particularly when you're far away because of the amount of logistics involved in that kind of thing. But really, when we work with artists particularly, so I'll talk about it from the artist point of view that we work with initially, they usually the artists we work with maintain a decent portfolio on side. But honestly, truthfully, one of the best things that they can do is just send us an email. We have a lot of editors, and I love giving people feedback on their portfolio. I think it's almost part of our responsibility, really. We have this gallery on our site that people submit to, and we have so many submissions. It's really hard to give people advice in regards to their art and how to improve it to get on our website. But if people ask, if they make the effort to ask, we will usually try and find the effort to tell you. So if you're an artist and you want to work with us, maintain a good online portfolio, try and keep that varied amount of work, and just get in touch with us and we'll give you feedback and we'll give you maybe some insights into what you could perhaps do to improve. In regards to working here at 3D Total, it's tricky because, like I say, we have a really good team who have stuck around because they are happy here, which is good. But I think if you've got genuine interest in working here and maybe a genuine interest in some of the things we do, like the publishing side of things, or even the CG stuff we work with on the website, I think really make an effort yourself to show that interest. So if you're already into different CG artists, maybe go out and see if you can get some interviews with some artists, create a blog or create a portfolio site and share these interviews on there and say, look, this is what the kind of thing I do and I'm really interested in it. I can prove it because I'm doing it in my free time anyway. That kind of thing is, I think it's impressive to all employers. You have to demonstrate a genuine interest in the job you're doing, particularly in creative jobs. In other jobs, if you're working banking and stuff, I think it's probably pretty hard to show an interest in that kind of thing externally. But in creative jobs, if you can demonstrate that actually, this is really important to you, you really care about this kind of stuff, and it's something you're building into what you do in your everyday life, then when you then come to people like us and say, look, I'm genuinely interested, can I come and try something out with you? It does look impressive and it does look appealing to us because we know, look, here's someone who actually they'd like to do this so much, they're doing it in their free time anyway. Having that sort of initiative goes a long way with, I think, employers in creative jobs. I mean, even if you're an artist keeping a portfolio and you want to work at a games company, or if you want to work in children's book illustration, which I know a little bit about, you should keep an online portfolio that's showing you the skills that they're going to be looking for. So create your own imaginary project and start creating concepts for it, or create your own imaginary children's book and just start making images for it. It doesn't matter if the story's dreadful, they're not going to be employing you to write unless that's what you want to do. Just try and demonstrate a genuine interest in the kind of thing that they're looking for. And it does go a long way with people. That passion to do a job is one of the key things for anyone working in the creative industries.
I love it, and I'll second again everything that you said. The top artists that I always worked with, especially when I was getting started, they all were self-publishing tutorials, plugins, texture libraries, like just whatever they could to sort of like share their journey as they were learning as an artist. And then those are the people that often are the top people that you work with. So if you want to break in, go and listen to this last probably like 10 minutes of this interview again, because I think Simon's laid out a bunch of extremely useful things that you can use to get noticed. And that's it for me for this podcast. Thank you, Simon, so much for sharing all this and letting us know what the Studio Manager is all about, and kind of giving us a sort of like a behind-the-scenes peek at 3D Total. I wish I was in a position where I could be like, take you up on that challenge, be like, I'm going to find a way to get into 3D Total as a Canadian, like just show up and be like, hey, I live in Worcester now. I'm working on my art. Let's go for beers. And be like, what the heck? Who is this guy? I never heard of him. And then before you know it, I'll be like that low man, so working my way up in the company. So thanks so much, Simon. 3D Total is at 3dtotal.com, and as usual, we'll have show notes over at pencilkings.com/podcast. And if there's one thing I can ask everybody who's listening, if you could go over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review, I would really appreciate it. I know I do a bad job at this, but I'm trying to do better and ask people to help. So I'm asking you to help, and if you're not asking people for help, ask me for help. I'm here for you. You can send me an email, mitch@pencilkings.com, and I will get back to you. You can also, Simon, if you didn't catch that, he also said he'd review your portfolio, and I know there's a ton of people who want that, so hopefully I'm not blowing up Simon's email, but if I do, it's we're all trying to help make the world a better place for artists. So thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great speaking to you, and it's nice to talk to people about information that is really helpful to help people in their career.
Awesome, and we'll see you next week on the next episode of the podcast. Now, when you're done listening to this episode, I'd love it if you could hop over to Kickstarter, because 3D Total's got yet another amazing product that they're bringing to market. This one is all about character design, which I know there's a ton of people who are obsessed, absolutely obsessed with character design, and this will be a nice little addition to your library. So that's it for me. See you next week.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
You talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.